The officer didn't have to shout. He just struck the 16-year-old black boy across the face, right there in front of the judge, and the whole courtroom went still, like the air itself had turned solid. The boy didn't cry out or protest. He simply raised a hand, wiped the blood from his lip, and turned his head toward the door, because that's the exact moment his father walked in. He didn't yell, didn't demand justice. He just stepped in, silent. And in that silence was something louder than any gavel. It was the kind of silence that shifts the room. You ever wonder what you'd do if someone hit your child in a courtroom, like justice was just performance? That man didn't have to answer with words. His presence changed everything. From the moment Jaylen entered, cuffed at the wrists, flanked by deputies, you could feel it. The hush wasn't quiet. It was heavy. His shoes tapped too loud on the courthouse floor, echoing like judgment. Behind me, someone whispered, "He must have done something bad." And with that one sentence, the room silently decided, guilty. Officer Doyle took the stand like he owned the place. Cool, unbothered, speaking of resistance and attitude like he was listing the weather. The judge barely looked up. Nodded. That nod? That was the real sentence. You could taste the tension in the air. Jaylen didn't move much. He sat still. Not scared, not frozen, just steady. Like someone who'd already learned how to carry storms. When he asked Doyle, "Is this your idea of law?" His voice was calm. No defiance, no fire, just depth. And that question hit harder than any punch. Doyle flinched, even if just for a second, then reacted, backhanded Jaylen right there. A gasp rippled through the courtroom, but nobody intervened. Not the bailiff, not the judge. Jaylen wiped his lip again, looked Doyle dead in the eye, and said, "You just made a mistake. You'll regret forever." Quiet but thunderous. The judge called for recess. People murmured, moved. But Jaylen didn't. That's when Nina Ford walked in, defense attorney, eyes sharp with experience. She knelt beside him and asked his name. He barely looked at her. "Names don't mean anything in here," he said. Not with rebellion, just with the weariness of someone who's seen identities erased. Still, he gave it. Jaylen Carter. She flipped through her notes. No priors, no record. Nothing to match the weight in his eyes. Then she saw it. A thin silver chain under his collar, catching the light. Engraved, Carter, Field, Office FBI. He saw her notice, tucked it back in, and said, "Whatever you think that means, it doesn't change how they see me in here." And that's when she understood. He wasn't trying to win. He was trying to survive. Recess didn't mean rest for Jaylen. Two officers strolled over, called it a routine drug sweep, and tore through his things, right there in court. Emptied his backpack, tossed his notebooks, even dumped his sandwich. She tried to stop them. He's not under arrest for possession, but they shut her down. File a complaint later. Later felt like a brick wall. They scribbled suspicious behavior on a clipboard, left it like a scar. No drugs, no evidence, just a mark. One officer muttered to the other, "Future inmate, not a student." Jaylen didn't flinch, just zipped his bag like he'd memorized this whole routine. Doyle swaggered back in, dropped a paper on the judge's bench. "Your Honor, I'd like to add resisting arrest and obstruction." The judge didn't blink, just nodded. "Sometimes you have to treat them like what they'll become." No one gasped. Just a shared sickness. Jaylen sat through it all, silent, watching. But when court resumed, Nina came prepared. She walked to the center like a surgeon approaching a patient, holding a flash drive. "Your Honor, I have new evidence. Security footage from Darrow and Fifth." The courtroom leaned in. The judge raised an eyebrow. The video played, grainy but clear. Jaylen between Officer Doyle and an elderly black man who looked terrified. Doyle shoved the old man. Jaylen stepped in, caught him, stood as a shield. That was it. Everything stopped. Nina said, "This contradicts Officer Doyle's report. My client acted to protect, not resist." For a heartbeat, hope pulsed in the room. But Judge Simons leaned back, wiped his glasses, and said, "Unverified footage, dismissed." Just like that, the truth hit the floor like shattered glass. Doyle smiled wider. It's always not their fault until they're in cuffs. Jaylen looked up, voice like steel wrapped in calm. "You're not the first to bury the truth, but I might be the last to stay buried." It landed hard. Something shifted. The room wasn't just watching anymore. They were seeing. For the first time, Jaylen wasn't just a defendant. He was a person, a presence. After the footage was tossed, Nina returned to her seat, eyes on him, like trying to understand what he was holding back. Jaylen slid a folded note toward her. No rush, no panic. She opened it. Watch, don't act. Not yet. Not a request. A plan. That's when she saw him adjust his sleeve, revealing a plain digital watch. Familiar. Issued to families of federal agents. 1 tap, signal. 2 taps, response. She didn't say a word. Jaylen leaned back, eyes steady, like someone who wasn't counting down, but already knew the exact moment the truth would walk back through the door. Here's a rewritten and slightly expa. He stood out without trying. Suit crisp, no tie, hands calmly clasped, eyes fixed on Jaylen. Most didn't notice him at first, but if you did, you knew he wasn't just watching. He was waiting. That was Marcus Carter, Jaylen's father. Jaylen never turned around. He didn't have to. Stillness, after all, is sometimes just the coil before impact. Doyle, smug and certain, leaned forward and sneered, "No one's here to save you, boy." And, for a breath, he was right, until a chair scraped at the back of the courtroom. The man in the suit stood, not rushed, not afraid, just there. He walked slowly, the crowd parting like water, until he reached the front. Voice calm, but cutting. "I am..." Just 2 words. Doyle froze. Then the man pulled a badge case from his jacket, flipping it open under the courtroom lights. Marcus Carter, Deputy Director, Federal Bureau of Investigation. You could feel the air evacuate the room. The judge paled. Doyle's face drained. Then Marcus turned to the bench. "You silenced my son. Now, you'll hear the sound of accountability. No anger. No volume. Just truth." Jaylen turned, barely, smiling, and whispered to Nina, "Told you someone would notice." But now no one was watching him. They were watching what came with him. Marcus stepped forward. "Your Honor, I'm requesting a special evidentiary hearing on the grounds of prosecutorial misconduct, judicial bias, and falsification of testimony." Nina stood beside him, firm. "We submit authenticated FBI footage." The screen lit up again. Same footage, but now stamped, time-coded, verified. Clear as glass. Doyle shoving an elderly man, Jaylen stepping in to shield him. Then Marcus dropped a folder thick with receipts. 3 prior incidents. 5 years. All Officer Doyle. All dismissed in pre-trial. By you. The judge's hand hovered over the gavel, but he didn't strike it. Couldn't. The courtroom wasn't his anymore. It belonged to truth. Then Marcus stepped closer. "By federal authority, Officer Doyle, you're under arrest for obstruction, abuse of power, and falsifying records." 2 agents appeared like shadows. Doyle opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The cuffs closed with a click. Phones came up. First one, then all of them. Clips hit the internet within minutes. Doyle in cuffs, face ghost pale. Headlines followed. Justice for Jaylen trended. The FBI launched a full review. Judge Simon's entire case history reopened. What had been hidden in silence now echoed loud. And when Jaylen walked out of that courthouse, his father beside him, the press shouted, flashes fired. But he didn't run. He walked. A reporter called out, "Why didn't you speak up sooner?" Jaylen paused, waited for the noise to drop, then answered quietly, "Because when justice speaks for you, you don't need to yell." It wasn't a quote. It was a lived truth. Marcus looked at his son, not as an agent, but as a father who had missed too many moments, and said, "I missed your childhood, but I won't miss your courage." Jaylen just nodded. They walked, step for step, into a different kind of history. Applause started in the crowd, one person then another, growing soft and proud, not spectacle. Solidarity. For every kid who'd been told to stay quiet, for every truth buried and now walking tall. They tried to silence a boy, but they woke something bigger. And if you're still listening, maybe you understand now. Silence can shift a room, and dignity, when it stands, doesn't need to shout. Jaylen never fought with noise. He stood with purpose. That's how justice enters, not roaring, but unshakable. So now the question isn't just, was justice done? It's, what does justice mean to you? Where do you draw the line between silence and surrender? And if you had been in that courtroom, what would you have do?